VIIHEALTH presents How to Equip Teams to Create Customer-Centric Experiences.
Given the current complexities that we are facing, such as HCP's digital fatigue, multiple generations in the workplace, and limited face-to-face interactions, we need to equip our brand teams and field teams to execute an authentic customer-centric experience. But the question remains, how do we do that? Well, here is my proposal for what we need to start doing to go into this direction. First, we need to have an aligned segmentation between sales, marketing, medical, and digital. We need to understand that a doctor that the sales rep calls an A doctor is the same as the competitor prescriber according to the marketing team, and the same as the one that medical calls key opinion leader, or the one that the digital team knows as digital immigrant. We also need to train our sales reps to become experts in customer experience. Allow them to understand how they can be more impactful by identifying the moments of truth throughout the customer journey. And have a laser focus on the ultimate goal, change mindsets and behaviors to provide better care for the patients. And finally, we need to empower our sales reps to become flexible to adapt to different go-to-market models. Some studies suggest that in the future, COVID-19 might become a seasonal issue, so we might need to start working on how our sales reps can be flexible to adapt to a pure-play go-to-market model during the winter when social distancing may be enforced, and more hybrid during the summer. Being customer-centric is not a destination, it's a journey where we constantly listen to changes in customer preferences and we adapt to their needs. If we succeed at this, then our digital transformation will deliver more than just fancy systems and will allow technology to be the enabler of the customer experience that we plan for our HCPs.
Welcome back to our fifth session today, and with the title The Rebirth of an Omnichannel Engagement Leader. And today really glad to have Mark and Jerrad in this interesting conversation. And Jerrad will use the opportunity to set the stage with his interesting slides which he prepared. Jerrad, the stage is yours.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, so as the Vice President of Product for Email DMD, I'm obviously a big fan of email as a channel. And so we're going to talk a little bit about why we see email as such an important channel at DMD, but also in the healthcare space overall. DMD sends roughly 50 million emails to North American healthcare providers per quarter. And so from that, we're able to gather a lot of really interesting data. And that data is what allows us to drive forward engagement. Our real goal here is to use email as a channel to cut through all of the digital noise. And we talked in the last session about, getting the attention of healthcare providers. Email has this really interesting property to it as far as digital engagement channels go. And that is, much like a website, it is archival. When you stand the email up or you send it, it's basically like a website in the healthcare provider's inbox, and they can engage with it on their terms whenever the time is right. And that's extremely powerful because as a push channel, it's the only push channel that's like that. When we think about, we work also in social and we work in programmatic and other channels that can be pushed, they're temporary. We see healthcare providers coming back to email several times throughout the month for certain organizations and using it as a jumping off point to enter into other digital experiences, for example, videos, or to go visit websites. And it's very easy to gather data from email. Probably easier and more robust reporting in email than any other channel. And that allows us, again, to gather really valuable information. For example, time on email, how long a healthcare provider is engaging with the content that you have prepared. And it helps us to then look at that data, analyze it, and figure out what is the right amount of content to push in each and every email. As well, we can figure out where they're engaging. Is it a mobile device, even down to the geolocation at which they're engaging? Are they engaging in the office setting? Are they engaging in their personal setting at their home? And when we go and look at some of the other data that we're going to look at, and Mark, if you want to go to the next slide, we can take a look at some of how we're going to cut through the noise. We're going to look at kind of the creative aspects that we can cut through the noise with. And we're also going to look at, in a minute, some of the different ways that we can engage them at different times of day and day of week. But when we look at the creative content that we use to cut through this engagement, it's really going to come down to looking at the phases of content, or phases of the things that we can change within the content that help us to cut through. At the earliest phase, we're looking to get an open out of the healthcare provider. And an open's important. Obviously, they can't take any further action without the open. But we do see some healthcare providers will engage with an email simply to open it and delete it. So at that first phase, as we're trying to get them to open the email, we really only have 3 components. We have a from line, which is going to give us theoretically our branding. We have a subject line, which we're going to want to be very, very, very short, typically less than 55 characters. So this is like your key attention grabber. And then we're going to have a pre-header in the inbox, which is typically taken from the first content within the email, although through many different sort of interesting methods and tactics, whether it's your ESP platform itself or hiding text to the top of the email, you are able to craft a crafted pre-header. As well, here we have some X factors that come into play, things like a conditioned response. They recognize the brand that you're sending for, and they ascribe some amount of value to that brand, so they're more likely to open it. As well, we see here that personalization plays a big role. Finding a way to get some sort of personalization into the pre-header, whether that's their location, their name, some sort of past behavior that they've taken, and being able to pull that into the pre-header section. Some people like to try to personalize subject lines. We've done a lot of testing around this, and while it's valuable to personalize the subject line, it's more important to keep the subject line short. And all data that we've gathered over the last 3 years says that those short subject lines really do drive the highest engagement. So we usually recommend personalizing the pre-header so that we don't use up valuable space in the subject line. But once we've gotten them in the email, we don't want them to go in and just delete it. So we want to have really great content inside of the email. And the key here is really to have a great header or headline. And we don't want to use that space up with a giant graphic, because some healthcare providers, especially when they engage in the office space, may not see your graphics initially. A lot of doctors, a lot of hospital systems, are going to be on Outlook, and it's going to have images off by default, and you can't guarantee yourself that they will turn on the images. And some hospitals will, if they are engaging in the hospital setting using Outlook, may block it altogether. So we want to provide multiple different pathways for them to get to your content. And one of those is going to be to have really good HTML headers at the top of the email. Anywhere where we leverage something like video, which we love. DMD loves doing video email and sees that as a great driver to get people into video content. We want to provide both the video itself and also some sort of text link in order to get them through if they don't have images available to them. This also brings up kind of the point that DMD has made for years, which is we prefer to email doctors at their personal email addresses. Most of the time, for most content, that's going to be the best email address, because you avoid things like image blocking, and it provides a doctor a wider variety of times with which to engage with the email. Doctors will engage with email at personal many times outside their office hours, but we do not see a lot of doctors engaging with their work email after office hours. And then for a lot of email content, our purpose is to drive them through to some form of deeper engagement, whether that's on a website, or possibly to take action and sign up for a webinar or CME event or something like that. So we want to provide a lot of good calls to action. And that's very, very key. And it's very, very key to get calls to action high up into the email. And that's a great challenge in pharma email because there's often the need to have a lot of fair balance and safety information. But as much as you can get those calls to action high and in the screen, and always thinking about the fact that you do not want to have your base calls to action be images. Because again, at times, doctors may have the images turned off by default. When we look at the time that we want to engage with healthcare providers, Mark, if you want to move to the next slide, there's a lot of interesting things that we can gather from the times at which healthcare providers engage with email. One of the interesting things that we've seen in the last year during the pandemic is a massive shift in the time of day and days of week in which healthcare providers engage with email. Once upon a time, it was almost exclusively early morning that was the best time to engage a healthcare provider in email. And if you were looking to cut through, you typically wanted to be in kind of the middle of the week in the morning. The greener the square is here, the more valuable that engagement time is to the healthcare providers. This is a look back at the last 30 days for all healthcare providers. So this is all types of doctors and NPs and PAs is what we're looking at here. And you can see presently, the best time of day is now in the late afternoon. At the height of the pandemic, it was actually in the evening. And that was a totally new behavior for healthcare providers. We've been tracking this for the last 6 years and have never seen afternoons and evenings be a good time to engage with healthcare providers. It's also important to note that it is important to create segments because like this is a very broad swath that we're looking at here. And on the next slide, if you want to show it, Mark, I did a cut here of what we call APP, which is our NPs and PAs, advanced practice providers, and then the physicians. And you can see that these cut slightly differently. The time of day, especially the day of week in which you want to engage with the physicians versus the NPs and PAs is different. Again, this is very valuable type of information, both for something like a rep triggered email, something that a rep might be sending in terms of when they would have the best opportunity to get that engagement, as well as marketing emails. A step deeper than this would be to take cuts, and we do cuts on this all the time, looking at different specialties, because each and every different specialty and subspecialty is going to engage at a different time of day and day of week than another one. And it makes sense because their schedules are different. General practitioners like FMs and IMs, they have much busier office hours throughout the whole day with which to engage email versus a specialist like a surgeon who has times at which they're in surgery and have no capability to engage with their digital content. In the last session, we also talked about the fact that physicians at their base core are consumers just like us. And so, you got to look at when they're active in their personal email with regards to other types of content. And you want to be present at those times. So you want to be present in their inbox when they go to the inbox to do potentially some shopping, to look at what advertisements have been there. And that's, again, why we see these times in the later day right now being very, very, very viable. Some other things to think about here with regards to cutting through is something called send time optimization, which is something DMD utilizes on all of our sends and is available through a lot of different email sending platforms, and I know other partners as well, which is actually using an algorithm to determine when the next best time is with regards to email to send an email. And so it will literally automatically pick that next best time based on previous 30, 60, and 90-day engagement behavior. And that really allows us to have our content in the inbox right at the right moment when a healthcare provider is likely to be in that inbox and potentially engage with the email. And so those technical things help us really cut through. Finally, we're going to look at another piece of creative content, just because I want to give you a clear picture of what these kind of subject line and pre-header and from line combinations should look like in order to gather the best opportunity for an engagement. This is a fake one we made up, but you can see here Cardiology Association is a from line. It creates the branding at the baseline. And then we have our subject line here, which is we tried to keep it very short. That's the dark bolded text there. Arterial fibrillation has a major breakthrough. And then the gray text is the pre-header. And that pre-header, you can see we personalize it here. We get, hello, Dr. Jones, your patients are depending on you. We set a sense of urgency. Your patients are depending on you. So we use a little bit of emotion in terms of urgency, really trying to engage that healthcare provider with the relief that they're able to provide their patients, to know the latest treatments for AFib. And you can see here that the whole thing flows as one clear idea. And that's the best way a subject line and pre-header can be combined. That the subject line literally reads straight through into the pre-header, creates perfect single story, and a really compelling reason to engage. So those are the ways that we see for cutting through into the doctor's inbox and really being there at the right moment with the right kind of content.
Thank you, Jerrad. Mark, anything you want to add?
Well, I think just following up on those three segments of being able to open, click, and then get engagement, a lot of what we've seen, and to your next question, Darian, we had a bit of a chat on that earlier, was about how to bring those previews forward. You're trying to bring the messaging early enough and high enough on the email physically, but then also early enough in the process of the clicking so that the physician can understand what they're about to engage in, how much time commitment they may have, and be able to have that small slice of snackable content, as Sabine had mentioned, to be able to connect to some content quickly and then come back for more later on. So what we're seeing in terms of video is that trend to be able to put previews or short imagery about key messages as part of that attract loop, try and bring that high on the process so it's right below the pre-header, and that way the key messages are delivered. Physicians can see it easily on mobile and in context, and then from there they can decide whether they've got the couple minutes or more to engage in that content at that moment in time, or to do it later on as their day permits. So I think these tactical elements are interesting. Something I was quite surprised by was the shift during the pandemic of best time of day. And now I think, as Jerrad had mentioned to me the other day, that it's starting to shift back as people are returning to more regular working hours. So that will be something to watch over the next cycle.
Yeah.
But depending where they live, right? In US, it's currently different than in Europe. So
Right.
For sure.
All of those times that we were looking at there are Eastern Standard Time in the United States. But I think the trend is very similar no matter where you're at. And I think we will continue to see it move back towards possibly pre-pandemic time of day and day a week that will probably come back into view at this point.
So it will literally be back to normal.
I think so. It's just how long will that take? I mean, that's really the X factor there, is how many months will it take for it to start to shift back to normal. And I think, again, we think about healthcare providers as, consumers and as normal people, as they, again, have more activities going on in the evening, whether it's, kids sports or whatever else. That's the reason, I think, why the shift to morning will come back into view as well. I think we know a lot of healthcare providers, personal experience, a lot of them get up in the morning and go to the gym, things like that. During the pandemic, that didn't happen. So there was less of a reason to be up first thing in the morning.
I would suspect, though, that, given that there's now much more content, there's many more people participating in the channels, many more companies with content, with also content that may have been previously not really great for a mobile format, but is becoming more viable in a mobile format. I would think that given the volume of content and physicians now interest in using their mobile devices, that we may see not quite a return to pre-pandemic view, but more of a spread where, because of mobile devices, there's some access at varying points in the day. And so, being able to test this, view this, get the data from it, and see how it affects your own campaign still is a key aspect of getting those opens.
Yeah.
Thank you. This leads us to the question which you see all on the screen, and this is what about the use of video within email campaigns? Maybe Mark, you can give the best practice from Pharma, and Jerrad can build on that.
Well, video has been as part of email in some way, shape, or form for years. What we've seen, though, since the mobile devices upgraded in about 2018, that really there's great opportunity to link the video with a preview and make it something that you don't need to necessarily open in a window to go somewhere else to a website to see a video. You can actually get the preview, the attract messages, the key messages right up front, and just tap and go and see that video directly in most mobile phone browsers that are out there. So I think that changes the game of how video can be used. That becomes much more part of the overall cycle, and we see it as really the low-hanging fruit of the traditional newsletter or marketing message, to be able to use it effectively to try and engage that physician to go that much more. Obviously, currently we've seen that video in the subject line, if that is used effectively, can improve the open rate, but it's really something about putting that content, best foot forward to be able to drive the click-through. That's where video is best positioned to drive the click-through, as well as drive the key message delivery, which is, honestly what most of the email campaigns are trying to do nowadays. So we think it's an exciting new area that will be able to take email campaigns that much further.
Thank you, Mark. Jerrad, anything you want to add?
Well, I concur with Mark on this very much. We've been utilizing video and email, obviously, in the way Mark was talking about earlier. Traditionally, it was just a screenshot that linked through to a video for basically as long as I've been doing this, which is 19 years in healthcare email. But being able to put the video in the email is so much more valuable for, I think, a lot of the reasons Mark said. But I think the other aspect to it is, as we talked about, pharma emails are very long already. There's a lot of required content, at least in the United States, in terms of ISI and fair balance. And being able to shorten those emails up and get a lot of information through in a short, crisp piece of content is exceptionally valuable, especially with the motion graphics side of things. Being able to turn sales aids into video-based motion graphics allows you to convey a lot of content in a very short period of time in a nice, crisp, short email.
Thank you. Let's move to the next question. How do I plan an effective email campaign within that omnichannel journey? Mark?
Right. So email is a channel, but it's also a key part of enabling all of the other aspects. So whether it's a email campaign being sent from a marketing perspective, or rep triggered email, the volume has increased significantly over the last year, where reps are also orchestrating different messages out to their cohort of physicians. So now you've got a series of capabilities that need to be planned and also be used. So it's not just about inviting people to a webinar or to a one-off campaign element. What is the series that's associated with an email? Does it connect to other points in the journey? Are you trying to do A/B testing with that email itself, so you have different or slightly different messages that are approved out for one physician segment versus another physician segment, in order to make sure to lever their access via email? So you can really start to view the email itself as not just a one and done, but there's a secondary send for those that didn't open the first time, the echo send, then you've got the follow-up material. How do you link it in a series of events? And what you'll find is that when you're looking at an email campaign, you're certainly looking at maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 different types of sub-touches to different segments over a period of time. And that's effectively what is going to be part of your overall omnichannel journey. So I think if sometimes we use words like email and it seems simplistic, but the value of this is really to set up a campaign that's driving certain goals over a period of time with a segment of physicians. And you need to be able to plan that as part of a journey and understand what messages are being sent at different points in time, irrespective of the day of the week. So I think it does need to be orchestrated.
Thank you. Jerrad, same question for you.
Yeah, from our perspective, I think the most valuable way that email can be leveraged in the omni-channel experience is by triggering literally having a bunch of trigger points, which, whether it's when somebody is exposed to a banner ad through a programmatic campaign, if they view that ad, they get an email 12 hours later. Whether they've seen a social post or not seen a social post, and then they get an email later, or the email causes, the triggering of the social post, or lack of opening an email causes the trigger of the social post. All of those kind of different trigger points, and adding into it, it could be, again, website visit or some sort of healthcare ecosystem data. They read an article on a medical publisher site, something like that causes an email to be sent. And as well, it can cause things like a rep to be notified in order for a rep to send the email, or push video content through a rep triggered email. The more those triggers that exist, the more robust the campaign is, the better the engagement rates are. So where we're doing these kind of triggered campaigns for healthcare providers, oftentimes on those trigger campaigns, you'll see open rates north of 60%, with really good post-open engagement, a lot of clicks, website visits, video views, and things like that. But then always you have to have a piece of it that's that broadcast campaign. So you're constantly feeding additional trigger points into it.
Thank you. And the last question of this session, definitely very critical, very important to mention, to discuss, which is which KPIs in terms of email make more sense in the next normal. We see that some data will certainly go back to the previous normal or to the old normal, but what are those KPIs which definitely stay here? So Jerrad, let's stay with you, and then moving to Mark.
Yeah, I think in this new normal or next normal that we're looking at, again, we've called out the fact that we know there's a lot more digital content being produced and being sent. And especially in email, one of the most underrated and overlooked KPIs is time on email, or what we would call read rate. And I think in the next normal, that has to become a key component of everybody's campaign. Just knowing that there's more information in the digital space, there's more email being sent, more other channels being utilized digitally. We have to realize that if a healthcare provider spends 20 seconds in your email reading your content, they have actually engaged with you. They may not take the ultimate action you wanted them to take, which would be to, click on something within the email, but they have actually engaged. They have learned something potentially. Again, this is where, bringing back video content into the email is very key, because they may have watched your video. We'd have some, KPIs based on their video viewing experience. But even if you're not sending video content, that engagement with the read is very important. Obviously, clicks and opens will always be important, and getting them to your website will be important. But if you're not looking at that read rate today, you're missing out on a great opportunity to see that somebody is potentially learning about your brand, has brand affinity for you, because they are giving you that valuable time, which has become even more valuable. Thank you.
And Mark, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think from the KPIs, email's been around with us for, it seems like eons.
Seems
like forever. And the core KPIs are the same. But as Jerrad mentioned, it's about previously just getting the open. Well, that's seen about how much of the email has fallen on deaf ears at that moment in time in terms of the content. And then we're looking for the click. And there is this change with around re-rate, where the email content delivery is that much more important. So if you can ensure that the key messages are delivered at the top of the food chain, that they're able to be seen on mobile easily, and within a short viewing time of physicians, that they can capture the information that's relevant for the brand or for the purpose in that email, then it makes sense to be able to have that additional focus of, okay, how many of these physicians spent enough time to be able to do that? Obviously, if somebody is in and out in an email in 2 seconds, they're not going to capture a lot of key messages. But if they have spent, more than a glance, more than 8 seconds, upwards of 20 seconds or further, then they are capturing the material. And that, I think, has to become a big part of how email is not just a delivery channel, but is now becoming more of an information conveyance, right? So it's not just about delivering the method to connect to somewhere else. It's also about delivering all of those key messages to try and drive physicians down their adoption change. So I think that's a key area to look at. And as part of the KPIs, it's also how do we then tie that back to that omnichannel journey that we highlighted earlier, where you may have multiple emails. So, and Jose Maria walked us through this morning the funnel. So how many funnels are operating simultaneously with this particular physician for this particular brand or topic, and being able to relate that overall view of the omnichannel campaign with their email activity, I think is very important as we move forward. So it's not just a single email event, but how they interacted with our entire email campaign, and looking at that at a both physician as well as segment basis.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mark. With that words, I would like to thank you for watching this interesting session. We are continuing to talk about the digital rep, so stay tuned and don't disconnect. So thank you very much, Mark. Thank you very much, Jerrad. It was really a pleasure, and let's keep in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.